Welcome back to Mr. Rosenbaum's classroom. I'm Mr. R, your math teacher, probably, or not. Either way, let's learn some math. Today we will be talking about adding and subtracting polynomials. Make sure you're familiar with what is x squared, and how to add and subtract negative numbers. Make sure you're following along with all the problems. Practice makes perfect, and no one ever got good just by watching someone else do it. There will be a link to some guided notes in the description. You can either print out a copy or copy down the notes onto a blank piece of paper. Adding and subtracting polynomials follow similar rules to adding and subtracting normal numbers, but we need to understand the concept of like terms. First, let's review what is a polynomial. Polynomials are any combination of one or more terms. You can see a common example below. Something that has an x squared term, a linear term, and a number. Remember that the numbers in front of the x's mean that they are multiplied by that number. Okay, so a term is a combination of any numbers and variables. The order of a term tells us what power it is. In these types of problems, we're going to be dealing with three types of common powers or terms. Basic numbers like 1, 2, and 3. Numbers without any x's next to them. Linear variables, which are terms that have x's. Quadratic variables, which are terms that have x squared in them. Now this is important. X and x squared do not combine, they do not mix. We have to keep our x's and our x squared separate from each other. So moving on. So on this side, feel free to pause it and look at the table. It's pretty self-explanatory. Monomials will be expressions with one term. The biggest term can be anything, a quadratic, like an x squared, linear, like an x, or a constant, which is just a number. Binomials have two terms, meaning that there are two pieces added or subtracted from each other. And finally, trinomials are expressions with three terms. Let's get started with some important rules for adding and subtracting polynomials. When you add and subtract, you need to understand like terms. So, x squared and 2x squared are both like terms. So we can add them and subtract them. X squared and 2x are not like terms. Let's go through some examples so you can better understand. Let's solve the following problem. X squared plus 2x minus 3. Then we're going to add that to 3x squared plus 8x plus 4. First, let's combine like terms. Let's highlight what our like terms are. X squared and 3x squared can both be combined because they're both x squareds. While 2x and 8x can be combined because they're both x terms. And just a reminder that x squared is just x times itself. And in the same way that 3 times 3 is not 3, x squared is not the same as x. Finally, we have just our numbers, negative 3 and 4. After that, we can add all the like terms together, like so. Okay, so x squared plus 3x squared, remember that there is an implied 1 in front of the first x squared, in the same way that when you say an apple, it's implied that there is one apple without having to say 1. 2x plus 8x, so we combine those, we get 10x. And then Finally, negative 3 plus 4, which gives us 1. So make sure you remember the rules for adding and subtracting positive numbers, or when in doubt, you can use the calculator. So pause the video and solve it for yourself. And these are answers. We write them together. This is important. This is our final answer. We do not need to add or subtract anything else because this is the simplest we can get it. We only have one x squared term, one x term, and one number, so we're good, and this problem is solved. Now, let's do an example where we're subtracting. X squared minus 4x plus 5. Then we're going to subtract that from 2x squared plus 9x plus 10. Again, we combine like terms. We match up all of our x squared terms, our x terms, and our pure numbers. I'll give you a moment to pause the video and match them up. Okay, what answer did you get? Let's compare answers. Again, let's start by combining like terms, like so. But remember, this time, because we're subtracting, each term will be subtracted from each other. So, x squared minus 2x squared gives us the answer negative x squared, because we're subtracting a bigger number from a smaller number, and this gives us a negative answer. Then, negative 4x minus 9, make sure you carry over any negative numbers. This will be negative 13x, since the number is becoming even more negative. And then finally, 5 take away 10. And this will give us negative 5. Then we combine all the pieces together, and our final answer will be negative x squared minus 13 minus 5. Okay, I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions or comments, you can post them in the comments. If you have any suggestions for future videos, leave them in the comments, and see you next time as we explore math.